Learn English through stories with Mayan.
On the morning the letter arrived, Arjun did not feel that his life was about to change. He felt only irritation. The envelope was thin, official, and ordinary. It lay on the wooden table beside his untouched cup of tea, carrying the quiet weight of consequence. Outside, the city moved as it always had, unbothered by the private storms of individuals. Cars rolled past, shopkeepers raised their shutters. Somewhere, a child laughed. The world had not paused for him, and yet, within him, something had already begun to fracture. Arjun had once believed that life was generous with second chances. He believed that mistakes were like raindrops, brief, inconvenient, and quickly dried by the warmth of time. He had never considered that some mistakes were more like seeds. They fall silently, almost invisibly, but when they take root, they grow into forests that block the sunlight for years. The letter was not long. It did not need to be. Its words were sharp, clean, and devastating. A decision he had made in a moment of impatience, a reaction fueled by wounded pride, had cost him the job he had worked for nearly a decade to secure. A heated argument, a reckless email sent without reflection, a public accusation typed in anger and delivered in seconds. That was all it had taken. Every mistake happens in seconds. The punishment can last for decades. But this story does not begin with that letter. It begins much earlier, in the quiet formation of habits, in the unnoticed shaping of character, in the daily choice between reaction and reflection. When Arjun was a child, his grandfather would sit with him beneath the old mango tree in their courtyard and tell him stories that were never dramatic but always meaningful. His grandfather would say that life does not usually collapse in explosions. It erodes through small cracks left unattended. At the time, Arjun listened politely but without urgency. Youth has a way of assuming that wisdom is meant for later. As he grew older, he developed a quick mind and a quicker tongue. Teachers praised his intelligence, but often warned him about his temper. He could not tolerate being misunderstood. He could not bear criticism. If challenged, he responded immediately, sharply, and with precision designed to wound. He mistook speed for strength. He mistook reaction for courage. In university, his reputation followed him, brilliant but difficult, talented but volatile. He dismissed the warnings. After all, he achieved results. He earned top grades. He secured internships. Doors opened for him. Success, he believed, justified his nature. What he did not understand was that character flaws do not always punish immediately. Sometimes they wait. They observe. They gather evidence quietly until the right moment arrives. Years later, working in a respected firm, Arjun encountered a colleague named Meera. She was calm, methodical, and patient in a way that unsettled him. Where he moved quickly, she moved thoughtfully. Where he spoke sharply, she asked questions. During a high-pressure project, tensions escalated. Deadlines tightened. Sleep became rare. In one crucial meeting, Meera questioned a section of his proposal. Her tone was professional. Her concerns were valid. But Arjun did not hear professionalism. He heard doubt. He heard challenge. He heard threat. His heart quickened. His face warmed. Pride, that subtle and dangerous companion, whispered to him that he must defend himself immediately. He left the meeting furious. Without pausing, without walking, without breathing deeply, he opened his laptop and composed an email. His fingers moved faster than his judgment. He accused Meera of undermining him. He implied incompetence. He copied senior leadership to ensure maximum impact. It took less than 3 minutes to write, less than 1 second to press send. In that second, the trajectory of his career bent in a direction he could not yet see. At first, nothing dramatic happened. There were no alarms, no immediate reprimands. In fact, the silence that followed felt almost victorious. Arjun interpreted it as proof that he had been right. But silence is often the space where consequences gather. Over the next weeks, he noticed subtle changes. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. Invitations to strategy discussions decreased. Feedback grew colder. more formal. The senior manager who once praised him now spoke with caution. Eventually, he was called into a meeting. There were no raised voices, only calm disappointment. The company valued talent, they said, but it valued integrity and collaboration more. His email had violated professional standards. It had damaged trust. Trust, unlike skill, is not easily repaired. He was given a formal warning. He told himself it was temporary. He would recover. He would prove himself again. But reputation, once cracked, carries its fracture lines forward. Months later, during restructuring, his name appeared on the list of those to be released. Officially, it was about budget and reorganization. Unofficially, he knew. He had given them a reason to let him go. The mistake had lasted seconds. The consequence would follow him into interviews, into explanations, into the silent judgments of future employers. Unemployment is not only financial, it is psychological. It is waking up without direction. It is answering questions from relatives with rehearsed optimism. It is the quiet shame of knowing that your own impulse placed you here. For the first time in his life, Arjun began to sit in silence without distraction. He replayed that meeting. He replayed that email. He imagined alternative versions of himself, one who had paused, one who had taken a walk, one who had written the email but saved it as a draft instead of sending it. He began to understand something profound. The real battle of life is not between you and the world. It is between your impulse and your awareness. In those reflective months, he returned to his grandfather's words. Life erodes through unattended cracks. His crack had been pride. His crack had been impatience. His crack had been the belief that being right was more important than being wise. He realized that mistakes rarely announce themselves as life-altering. They arrive disguised as justified reactions. One evening, while driving home from a job interview that had ended politely but without promise, Arjun witnessed an accident. A young man on a motorcycle had attempted to overtake a truck at a sharp turn. It was a decision made in a heartbeat, perhaps driven by urgency, perhaps by overconfidence. The crash was brutal. As bystanders gathered, as sirens approached, Arjun felt the phrase forming within him with unbearable clarity. A mistake in seconds, a punishment for decades. The rider survived, but with injuries that would change his life permanently. One risky choice, one impulsive decision, and the road ahead would never be the same. Arjun understood then that his story was not unique. It was universal. Every day, people gamble with moments. On the road, in relationships, in conversations, in finances, forgetting that time does not reverse easily. Determined not to repeat his pattern, Arjun began practicing something deceptively simple: the pause. When anger rose, he counted his breaths. When criticized, he asked a question instead of defending immediately. When drafting messages, he waited before sending them. Sometimes he even imagined reading his words aloud to his future self and asking whether that future self would thank him or regret him. At first, it felt unnatural. His instincts demanded speed. But gradually, reflection replaced reaction. He found part-time work teaching communication skills at a local training center. Ironically, he taught young professionals about emotional intelligence and professional conduct. He shared stories, without naming himself, about how brilliance without control becomes self-destruction. He told them that the most powerful word in decision-making is not yes or no, but wait. Wait before responding. Wait before accusing. Wait before spending. Wait before quitting. Wait before risking what cannot be repaired. He watched as students nodded, some recognizing themselves in his narrative. He hoped they would learn without paying his price. Years passed. Slowly, patiently, Arjun rebuilt his career. It was not as glamorous as before. It did not carry the same prestige, but it carried something more valuable: humility. He came to understand that life is not measured by how quickly we act, but by how wisely we choose. The world often celebrates speed, instant replies, rapid decisions, immediate results. Yet the human heart requires contemplation. Character requires discipline. He saw relationships destroyed by a single betrayal that lasted minutes. He saw families divided by one sentence spoken in anger. He saw young individuals imprisoned because of crimes committed in moments of recklessness. He saw investors lose lifetime savings chasing opportunities they had not studied. Again and again, the pattern repeated. Seconds create decades. But he also discovered a hopeful truth. Seconds can build decades as well. A second spent choosing patience can preserve a marriage. A second spent refusing a harmful habit can protect a future. A second spent speaking kindly can heal wounds that might otherwise last years. A second spent slowing down on a dangerous road can save an entire lifetime. The same power that destroys can also protect. One afternoon, long after the initial letter that had cost him his job, Arjun received another envelope. This one came from a former colleague who had heard him speak at a workshop. It was from Mira. She wrote that she had once resented him deeply. His email had embarrassed her and damaged her confidence. But she had also observed his transformation over the years. She had heard of his efforts to mentor others. She acknowledged the sincerity in his recent work. At the end of her letter, she wrote something that felt like redemption. We are all more than our worst moment if we choose to learn from it. Arjun sat quietly with that sentence. Mistakes happen in seconds. Punishments may last decades. But growth, too, is built in seconds. Seconds of awareness, seconds of restraint, seconds of courage to admit wrong. If you are listening to this story, perhaps you are standing at your own moment. Perhaps anger is rising in you. Perhaps temptation is whispering. Perhaps pride is urging you to respond quickly, to prove yourself, to win. Pause. Imagine your life not as a series of isolated seconds, but as a long river stretching decades ahead. Ask yourself whether this decision will create calm waters or turbulent currents. Ask whether the satisfaction of this moment is worth the weight it might place on your future. Understand that self-control is not weakness, it is protection, it is foresight, it is love for your future self. No prison cell appears in a single day. It is built brick by brick through choices. No broken relationship collapses without warning. It cracks through repeated reactions. No successful life is constructed through impulse. It is shaped through deliberate action. Your mind will always generate reactions. That is human. But your wisdom determines which reactions become actions. Arjun's story is not extraordinary. That is precisely why it matters. It reflects the quiet battles fought daily within ordinary people. It reminds us that greatness is less about dramatic victories and more about disciplined moments. When you leave this story and return to your life, you will not face a single grand decision. You will face dozens of small ones. Whether to speak harshly or gently, whether to rush or to reflect, whether to indulge or to restrain, whether to risk recklessly or to plan wisely. Each one will last seconds, but together they will define decades. Choose in a way that your older self will thank you. Choose in a way that protects your freedom, your dignity, your relationships, and your peace. Because every mistake happens in seconds, and the punishment can echo for years. So think, pause, and react accordingly.